Hello everyone, thanks for tuning up to this recorded version of our live stream from Odessa. Every Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m. GMT, we go live from Odessa's historical quarter. Then we publish a recorded version on our YouTube channel. Hello everyone, thanks for tuning up for my live stream from Odessa's historical quarter. I'm Olga at Odessa Walks. Every Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m. GMT, I do live streams from Odessa's historical quarter. Why? Because I want to share with you our beautiful city and talk about its history, culture, traditions, and lifestyle. We did the first two episodes from the commercial port, which is over there in front of you. This is the Black Sea, the Bay of Odessa, the commercial port, and the passenger terminal. That tall building in the back is the Hotel Odessa, built in the 2000. The shorter building in the front is the passenger terminal. Then we streamed from the Potemkin staircase. This is the view on the steps from the top down. The staircase connects the harbor with the edge of the cliff, where 225 years ago the city was founded. Those who don't feel like walking up and down the staircase can take a funicular. This is the funicular. It's a replica of the original funicular, which was created here in 1902 by a local engineer, but the carriages were brought from Paris. Over there in the back is the commercial harbor. We did last live stream from Primorsky. In English, it's by the sea boulevard, which is Odessa's marine facade. Today we're going to continue our walk along this boulevard. Last time we started from the statue. This is the first monument in the city, put there 220 years ago, to Odessa's first official governor, who was instrumental in making the city the third largest city in the Russian Empire and the main port in the south. And then from the statue we walk towards the trees and then further down the boulevard. And today we're walking along the other part of the boulevard. These two absolutely identical rich yellow buildings make up a square right on top of the Potemkin staircase. And this one in the 1800s was one of the most expensive and one of the most luxurious hotels in the city, the St. Petersburg Hotel. Among its guests were a famous American writer, Mark Twain, and a famous pianist, Rachmaninoff. In the Soviet times, the building was nationalized. Nowadays it consists of the apartments on the second and the third floor, and the space on the first floor was occupied by the restaurant, which went bankrupt last year, and now it's empty. Today this boulevard is one of the premier spots in the city and a favorite place among the locals for a stroll. It's very busy in the weekends, in the summer, when it's a touristy season. Now it's mainly the locals who come here for an afternoon stroll. A new thing is these garbage containers for different types of garbage. All these trees were planted after the city was founded. It was a sandy, rocky edge of the cliff overlooking the Black Sea. Then the city's construction started from the area behind these mansions, and here was the rubbish dump. People were bringing here construction garbage. Finally, in 1820s, the city's governor decided that Odessa needed a marine facade. The Black Sea is down there. Behind the trees you can see a little bit the yellow cranes. Most of the guests in the 1800s arrived in the city by the sea. The trees were young, they were short, and this was the first spot which they saw. So the governor decided that the city needed a marine facade. He gave here land to rich people for free, but on two conditions. They had to build beautiful houses and do it fast, in 5 years. So all these were private mansions. For example, this one belonged to a Russian aristocratic family. Then the 1917 revolution happened. The Soviets nationalized all private property, and this became government buildings. This building, for example, became the House of Sailors. Then after the breakdown of the USSR in 1991, most of the mansions were privatized. Some were restored, like this one. This house belongs to a bank, but they don't use it for bank purposes. They lease it, and it houses a karaoke hall. Karaoke is very popular in the city. These two cafes are usually packed in the summer. We don't have a lockdown yet, although the talks were to introduce a lockdown for weekends. So far it happened in the region, but not here. Most of the places in the old town have menus in 3 languages, in Russian, English, and Ukrainian. And now let's see what's behind the facade of the stunning building. A beautifully restored arch. According to the city plan existed in the 1800s, buildings had to be built as close to the road as possible, wall to wall. There was an arch for the carriage, and the only space people had was in the back of the building. In rich neighborhoods, that space in the back was used to park carriages. In poor neighborhoods, as extra space for communal living. Usually the owners lived in the main part of the building, which faced the boulevard, and the buildings on the sides were occupied by the servants or were rented out. Nowadays they're occupied mainly by the private businesses, and that building in the front consists of the apartments, which are privately owned. And people who live in this courtyard, they chip in to maintain the place. And inside the building there's a beautiful staircase. And now let's go back to the boulevard. The boulevard is not big. It's only 250 meters. These trees were planted mostly after World War II. The chestnuts are some of the main kinds of trees in the city. Odessa in May is called the blooming city for the chestnuts and acacias, which blossom with small white flowers. The first building, which was built on the boulevard, is this one. In 1825, a Russian aristocratic family finished its construction, but it consisted only of 2 floors. The 3rd floor was added later. Then they sold it, and the new owners turned it into the hotel. That happened in 1840s. It's the oldest operating hotel in the city. The Soviets didn't shut it down. It was one of the main hotels for the Soviet elite, but they changed the name. It became the Odessa Hotel. Lots of famous people who came to visit, they stayed there. Isaac Babel, Sergei Eisenstein when they were filming the Battleship Potemkin film, Chekhov. Then in the Soviet times, when Odessa housed the international film festivals, Marcello Mastroianni and lots of other stars, movie stars, who came to visit. In 1990s, the building was privatized. It remained working as a hotel, but the owners gave it the original name, Londonskaya. This is the Londonskaya Hotel. This glass pyramid is called by the locals the Louvre. Indeed, it reminds of the glass pyramid which is in front of the Louvre. In the early 2000s, the city was doing reconstruction works on this boulevard, and while that was happening, archaeologists did some diggings, and they found the remains of the ancient Greek settlement which was here in the prehistoric times. So they decided not to cover it up, but to create this glass roof so that people could see. They brought in the vases, some other artifacts, which supposedly date back to the same time period, and created this archaeological open-air museum. The owner of this mansion, right before the Bolshevik Revolution, was a local merchant of Jewish origin. After the revolution, he escaped the country, went to France, and managed some of the businesses which belonged to the Rothschild family. In the Soviet times, the mansion was turned into a hospital. This yellow house became quite famous thanks to a book which became a bestseller in New York in 2012. In 1840s, the owners of the mansion became a Jewish family who came here being very poor. But in 30 years, they made enough money to purchase this mansion and live next door to wealthy Western European merchants and Russian aristocrats. And this tells you actually a lot about Odessa and how many opportunities were here in the 1800s. In the early 2000s, a family descendant wrote a book about a family story, how they came to Odessa, how they were living on the boulevard, And then the two sons were sent to Vienna and Paris. They became business partners of the Rothschild family. And then later, they lost all their wealth during the Nazi times. And this building belonged to the same Jewish family and was used as the bank and trading company house. In 100 years after its founding, Odessa became the third largest Jewish city in the world after New York and Warsaw. The Jews were among the city's first settlers. Together with other nationalities, they got equal rights. They were allowed to preserve their religion and lifestyle. They got land to build a house, or in the countryside, they could get a piece of land for farming. So, attracted by the equal rights and lots of opportunities of the fast-growing city, they started coming. They were small craftsmen, wheat brokers, traders, merchants. Later they became city's architects, and in the early 1900s they made up the second largest nationality in the city. This beautiful plane tree is definitely the oldest tree on the boulevard. There's an old painting which dates to 1888. That's the year when the statue was put here. And in that painting there is this monument and a tiny tree which grew and became really big. Sycamores are also some of the main kinds of trees in the city. And this is the third monument in Odessa, the third one which was put on the money of Odessa citizens to the famous poet and writer Alexander Pushkin. We say that Pushkin made Odessa immortal because he dedicated a chapter of his famous novel Eugene Onegin to the city. He spent here 1 year, wrote lots of poems and parts of Eugene Onegin. In 1880, when the country was celebrating, when the Russian Empire was celebrating its birth anniversary, the decision was made to put a statue here. The sign on the statue says, "To Pushkin from Odessa citizens." The cannon is a real thing. It's an artifact of the Crimean War. In 1850s, there was a war between the Russian Empire on one side and England, France and Turkey on the other side. On Holy Friday, the Orthodox Easter Eve, 1854, several English and French ships sailed into the Bay of Odessa, made a few shots at the city. The cannonballs were rolling around the first floors of the mansions here. And then the coastline batteries started shooting back, pushed the ships back from the harbor. One got stuck on shallow waters, exploded, and that cannon is from that ship which exploded. That was the British ship Tiger. What made the city rich was wheat and grain trade. Italian and Greek merchants sailed here to pick it up, and then they sold it in the Western European countries. In the late 1820s, the city allocated the money to build the first building of the grain and commodity exchange. Then later in the 1800s, a new building of the commodity exchange was built. The trade moved there, and this became the city hall. Since the late 1890s, it's been the city hall. The statues on top are the figures of day and night, and they symbolize the eternity of trade. Over there is Ceres, the goddess of fertility, meaning fertile land which gave wheat. And over there, wishing you health and wealth, is Hermes, the god of trade. An American historian has come up with a joke. She explains success of Odessa by successful marriage of the god of trade to the goddess of fertility. Trade and rain, that's what made the city rich. And this spot finishes the boulevard where we walked. So this is the end of today's live stream. We're gonna continue tomorrow. We're gonna walk the other part of this boulevard. So tomorrow, Sunday at 1 p.m. GMT, we're gonna continue walking along Primorsky Boulevard. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and tune up tomorrow to continue exploring Odessa. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.